بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته, and welcome to Fiqh al-Muamalat series. Today's topic is definition of contract. So we'll start from today onwards to talk about the theory of contract and of course follow by the related applications of Fiqh al-Muamalat. So contract is very important in Sharia and Islamic finance as well, as the entire Islamic facilities and offering and products and so on and so forth, being in Islamic banking or Islamic capital market or takaful or wealth management, offer in form of product and services are built upon a contract. So if the contract goes well, and if the contract goes fine, and if the contract goes valid, so basically respectively, the facility, the product offer, the services offer would be valid as well, and as a result of that, it will maintain its Sharia compliant status. And if something goes wrong with the aqad or with the contract, the way it is concluded, so it may have a negative impact on the validity and the Sharia compliant status of the product and services offered in Islamic banking or Islamic capital market or takaful or wealth management and so on and so forth. So understanding contract is a part and parcel of the Sharia compliance understanding requirements as well. So today we'll be talking about literal meaning of the contract, the technical meaning of the contract, and the impact of the contract on the offer and acceptance. Let's start by talking about the definition of the contract itself. Of course, we have to start that the Quran al-Karim in Surah Al-Ma'idah has mentioned the contract in the verse, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu, awfu bil-uqud, or who you believe, fulfill your contract. So fulfilling the contract is one of the Sharia requirements, and this is one of the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Surah Al-Ma'idah. Now, if we look at the literal meaning of the contract itself, which is originated from the Arabic word aqad or plural uqud, its meaning basically it's to tie, to conclude, to join, to lock, and to contract. And as you can see, the very close meaning to the technical definition is a contract, which has the relationship of and meaning of tying, meaning you tie offer to an acceptance, you tie what's so-called a buyer to a seller in a kind of relationship as a result of that. Now, if you look at the contract from its broad concept, we will find two meanings. The first one basically is a very general, which could be defined as anything that the person intends to do or to act, whether it is issued by one single person, such as, for example, waqf or a gift. Normally the gift is the issue by single person. Waqf also, it is an issue by a single person. So there is one single, it is a unilateral contract basically. It is a one initiative that has been issued and intended by one person only. Or it is an issue by both parties, which is basically the bilateral contract, such as a sales, which is basically the precise meaning. So the first meaning is a very general, any kind of act that has been issued by a person could fall into the concept of contract or aqd, even it is done by a single person. Now, the precise definition of contract or aqd, which is more popular, and it has involvements of two parties in the context of sales. For example, it's a buyer and a seller. It could be defined as conjunction of an offer or proposal or ijab and acceptance or qabul, meaning a connections between an offer and acceptance will create what's so called the act. When the offer and the acceptance are met, so basically we will have what's so called a formation of a contract. Contract is built upon, of course, there are details that we are going to highlight later on with regards to the term and conditions that govern the pillar of the contract when we talk about the pillar of the contract, but here we are just in the definition. So again, as far as the definition is concerned, also as defined by مجلة الأحكام العدلية, which is a very good definition as well, مجلة الأحكام العدلية define the contract as a contracting of the connections of an offer with an acceptance in lawful manner, which marks its effect on the subject matter of that connection. Which means that there is a connections between an offer and acceptance. Then we will see later on that offer is issued by one party, such as the seller, and the offer is issued by another party, which is in the case of buyer is a buyer. So when the offer and acceptance that have been issued by two different parties, such as a seller and a buyer, but this issuance has been done in a way that is consistent with a Sharia, meaning it is in lawful manner. That's what has been done by the definition, meaning it is a lawful manner, meaning there is no, the competency basically and term and conditions of the two contracting parties that we are going to provide in details later on in the coming session. But in general, at this stage is that offer and acceptance have been issued by a buyer and seller or by two contracting parties, and they have been connected in a lawful manner, which mark its effect on the subject matter, meaning that this offer and acceptance will make an impact on the subject matter. What is the subject matter? In the case of sales, it is a price and goods. And the impact is that price goes to the seller and goods goes to the buyer. So meaning that each one of the two contracting parties will have ownership over the subject matter related to him, being a buyer or a seller, as a result of the connections of the offer and acceptance, which legally creates and mark its effect on the subject matter. Now, the offer here in these definitions means what has been proposed first by the one of the two parties. This is according, of course, to the Hanafi. When we go to the offer and acceptance, we will detail and provide more details, the views of the Hanafi versus the majority of the scholars. But at these definitions, let's stay with this one of the angles of the interpretation of the ijab and the qabul, which is the Hanafi, whereby they look what the offer or the ijab in the definitions that has been mentioned in Majalat al-Ahkam al-Adliya, which is, by the way, a Hanafi reference. It is what is proposed first, meaning it is the first action by one of the two parties. Either he's a buyer or a seller, it doesn't matter. So it is driven by action. First actions is the offer. And of course, the acceptance or the qabul means what is stated secondly by one of the two parties. So, of course, providing his consent to conclude the contract. So basically, the offer and acceptance is a kind of a consent provided by the two parties that they are okay to proceed with the transactions, meaning I'm okay to dispose this asset from my ownership. And the other party, I'm okay, I express my consent, I express my positive consent to give the price as a considerations for these goods or this book or this car and so on and so forth. So the offer and acceptance basically is a communications that has been issued by two contracting parties, and they have been connected in a lawful manner. These connections will create an impact on the subject matter, whereby, as I mentioned, in the case of sales, price goes to the seller and the goods goes to the buyer. The next point we would like to highlight is an example which says that if someone say to another one, I have sold my house to you, or my car, or my book to you, with such an amount, and the other party say, I hereby accept buying the car or the house or the book from you with the set price. So we will have here a case of a connections between an offer that has been issued by a seller and acceptance that has been issued a buyer, where they agree on specific amount in a lawful manner, and as a result of that, it creates an impact on this subject matter, whereby the price goes to the seller, and the goods, which is in the case could be a house, or could be a car, or could be a book, goes to the buyer. Now, again, as I mentioned, the effect will be the transfer of ownership. Meaning this is as a result of the impact, the transfer of the ownership of the house, or the car, or the book will be basically to the buyer, and of course the price will be to the seller. Here, the last point I would like to highlight is that classical scholars and also contemporary scholars as well consider both bilateral contract and unilateral contract as a form of contract. Of course, from a general meaning, because if you go to the technical definition of contract, a contract should be issued by two parties, meaning there is an offer from one party and there is what's called an acceptance from another party. If the two have been issued and they are connected in lawful manner, it creates an impact on the subject matter. So this kind of definition is for the contract. So if one side or one of the two parties unilaterally issue an offer without an acceptance, whether we call it a contract or not, because it may not fall on the specific definition, but as we mentioned at the beginning, it may fall under the general meaning of the definition of the contract, because we mentioned that contract has a very general meaning, whereby it could include a unilateral contract, whereby a person may act, or it could be from a specific angle, where offer and acceptance will be issued by two parties from a Sharia standpoint, whether it has been issued by one or have been issued by two, they will be considered as a contract. As a result of that, waqf, ibra, even though it has been issued by one single person, and there is an offer without need to have an acceptance, but still considered from Sharia standpoint as a contract. Hence, the general rules of the contract will be applicable to it, of course, with some guidelines and restrictions that we may highlight it in the future, inshallah. With that, thank you very much, and hope to see you in the coming sessions. And assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.